Chapter 7. Ashes and Illusions. Another 14 days passed like a slow tide, each one pulling the horizon closer to the ground beneath Willow's Hollow. Gran and Zen trained until their bodies screamed. The boys trained until their minds blurred. But no amount of preparation could erase the knowledge that Thornvale did not send warnings out of kindness. They sent them out of patience. And patience, in the hands of a march, was just another form of threat. On the 15th day, the sky over Willow's Hollow darkened, not with clouds, with riders. 100 knights and mages poured into the valley like a storm. Their armor bore the thorned vine and broken sword crest. Their cloaks were the color of winter frost. They did not ride in formation. They rode in a wide arc, surrounding the village, cutting off every road, every path, every escape route. The villagers saw them coming, and had time only to lock their doors and pull their curtains. Gran stood on the porch, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Zen stood beside him, her hands at her sides, her mana already humming beneath her skin. Rowan and Wyatt stood behind them, watching the road where the riders had come from. "They came fast," Rowan said quietly. "They were already close," Zen replied, "waiting for their full force. They wanted to give us time to reconsider. That is not mercy. That is theatre." The riders did not head for the village. They came directly to the cottage, cutting through the garden, trampling the flower beds Gran had spent weeks planting. 20 knights and a dozen mages dismounted in the yard, their boots striking the earth with synchronized precision. They fanned out in a wide arc, forming a perimeter around the house, the stream, the tree line. Every escape route was cut. No one spoke, no one moved. Willow's Hollow held its breath from a distance, the villagers watching from their windows, too afraid to come out. A single figure stepped forward from the formation. He wore polished plate armor, a crimson plume on his helm, and a cloak bearing the Thornvale crest embroidered in silver thread. He removed his helm, revealing a face that was all hard angles and cold calculation, a man who had spent years perfecting the art of looking formidable. He had no familiarity with Zen, no history between them. That was the worst part. "I am Commander Korst of Thornvale's northern garrison," he announced, his voice carrying across the yard with practiced authority. "By order of the March Command, all former personnel of the Thornvale Division are to be accounted for. The woman known as Zen, where are your papers of discharge?" Zen stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of someone who had commanded battlefields these men had only read about in reports. "I have them here, and have given them to Knight Captain Vale when he inquired." Korst's expression did not flicker. The papers were never received, or perhaps they were invalid. "It matters little. The order stands. You will come with us. Your husband and sons will remain here, under guard, until your compliance is confirmed." Gran's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "They stay out of this." Korst turned his gaze to Gran, assessing him with the detached interest of a man evaluating a weapon. "Your husband will remain. The boys will remain. Whether they stay unharmed depends entirely on cooperation." Zen's hands curled into fists at her sides. Her mana flared, just for a moment, just enough for the air to smell like ozone, and the ground to tremble faintly beneath her feet. Then she forced it down. Violence would not save them. Not like this. Not with elite warriors surrounding a family at their home. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. Korst's mouth curved into something that was not a smile. "Your service, your knowledge, your obedience. Thornvale does not take deserters lightly, Zen. You know this. You served us. You know what we do to those who walk away." Behind them, Rowan felt Wyatt's hand grip his shoulder. Both boys understood the unspoken question hanging in the air. What would happen if Mum said no? Zen did not answer right away. She looked at Gran, and in that look was a lifetime of shared decisions, of battles fought back to back, of quiet mornings and nights. Gran met her gaze and shook his head once. Not now. Not like this. Sen turned back to Korst. I will not come with you, but I will not give you a reason to burn this village. Go home. Tell your march that I am dead. Find another ghost to hunt. Korst's expression hardened. You think this is a negotiation? I think, Zen said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried clearly across the yard, that you are standing in the yard of a family home with fields, of crops that will rot if no one harvests them. You are threatening a woman who has every reason to burn everything you value to ash. Do you really want to find out if I am lying? The yard went still. Even the Thornvale nights seemed to shift uncomfortably. Zen's manna was no longer humming beneath her skin. It was rising. The air grew heavy, charged with the promise of lightning. The ground beneath her feet cracked in a radial pattern, the earth splitting as her power pushed outward. Korst did not step back, but his hand tightened on his sword hilt. Then you leave me no choice, he said quietly. He raised his hand. 100 Thornvale mages began to weave. The battle did not begin with a charge. It began with a wall of fire. Thornvale mages on the eastern flank unleashed a coordinated inferno, flames racing across the dry earth toward the cottage, where Gran and Zen stood. The boys instinctively threw up wards, but the heat was overwhelming, the flames moving faster than any single spell they had ever faced. Gran moved first. He stepped in front of Zen and the boys, his diffused mana amplifying his frame to its full Tier 3 potential. He slammed his palm into the ground, and a kinetic wave erupted outward, meeting the firewall head-on. The shock wave parted the flames, sending them spiraling upward in a column of smoke and ash. The earth beneath Gran's feet shattered, craters forming in a perfect circle around him as he absorbed the recoil through his hardened frame. Sen did not hesitate. She raised both hands, and a hexagonal barrier of interlocking mana threads materialized over the cottage and the boys. It was not a single shield but a layered construction, an inner layer of kinetic dispersion, a middle layer of thermal reflection, an outer layer of mana distortion. Together, they formed a dome of luminous light that hummed with contained archmage power. Thornvale's mages responded instantly. Spells of every type rained down: fire, ice, lightning, earth fissures, binding chains of compressed air. Zen's barrier absorbed them all, the layers flaring and shifting to counter each attack. But the strain was immediate. Her mana core pushed against its boundaries. Your mum, Wyatt whispered, his eyes wide as he watched the barrier crack under the assault. Your barrier. I know, Zen said, her voice tight with effort. Hold still. Do not move. Do not speak. Trust me. Gran, charge. He closed the distance to the Thornvale line in 3 strides, each footfall driving a crater into the earth behind him. His sword, drawn from somewhere, from a sheath, from the earth, from nowhere, carved through the air, with a visible cone of compressed force ahead of it. He hit the Thornvale formation like a siege engine, his strikes shattering armor, sending knights flying, cutting through the front line like a blade through water. Zen's lightning followed. Arcs of blue-white energy split from her fingertips, branching and seeking, striking Thornvale mages mid-cast, disrupting their weaves, forcing them to break formation and defend themselves. The ground smoked where the bolts struck. The air reeked of ozone and burnt flesh. Rowan and Wyatt watched in horrified fascination. This was not training. This was not controlled sparring. This was war. This was the power that had survived Gracespire Pass. This was their mother and father, fighting with everything they had, and even together, they were being pushed to their limits. 100 enemies was not a number that could be overcome by 2 fighters, no matter how powerful. Thornvale knew this. That was why they had come with overwhelming force. They did not need to kill Gran and Zen quickly. They needed to wear them down, to exhaust them, to make the cost of resistance higher than the cost of compliance. The battle raged for hours. The cottage was reduced to splintered wood and shattered stone. The earth around it was a craterscape, torn and scorched and cracked. Gran and Zen fought with everything they had, but the Thornvale forces kept coming, rotating fresh warriors into the assault while the exhausted ones fell back to recover. Gran's diffusion was failing. His frame, usually unbreakable, bore visible wounds, cuts, bruises, fractures that his mana struggled to knit back together. His sword had shattered twice, replaced by fragments of stone and splintered wood from the ruins. His strikes still carried devastating force, but they came slower, less frequent, each one costing him more than the last. Zen's barrier had fallen an hour ago. She had dissolved it to redirect its energy into a concentrated lightning strike that took out 3 Thornvale mages at once, but the cost had been severe. Her mana core still pushing against its boundaries, but she could not afford to break now. Not with the boys watching, not with Gran bleeding beside her. "Zen," Gran said, his voice rough, blood tracking down his forehead. "The boys. They need to." "I know," she whispered back. She turned her head, her eyes finding Rowan and Wyatt crouched behind a collapsed wall, their own wards flickering weakly around them. "Boys, listen to me. Go to the blacksmith shop. Forge Master Shannon. He'll know what to do. He will." A Thornvale mage launched a spell from the eastern flank. Zen saw it coming. The mana signature, the trajectory, the timing, but she could not intercept it in time. Gran saw it too. He threw himself in front of Wyatt, taking the full force of the spell on his back. The impact drove him to one knee, his diffusion screaming as it absorbed the kinetic force. Blood sprayed from his lips. "Dad!" Rowan lunged forward, but Zen's hand caught his shoulder, her grip iron tight. "No," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "Stay, please." Gran pushed himself back up. His legs trembled. His sword was gone. His body was a map of wounds, but he stood. He always stood. Zen raised her hands one last time. Lightning erupted from her fingertips in a blinding storm, striking every Thornvale mage in range. The sky split open with thunder. The ground shook. For a moment it looked like she might break through, might force them back, might. Then 3 Thornvale commanders coordinated a counterattack. Binding spells lashed out from 3 directions, wrapping around Zen's arms, her legs, her torso. Compression spells slammed into her from behind, driving her to her knees. A 4th mage unleashed a net of earth mana that pinned her to the ground, the weight crushing the air from her lungs. Zen struggled, but the bindings held. Her mana core, pushed to its absolute limit, finally cracked. The mana backlash tore through her, and for the first time in her life, she felt her power slip away. Not destroyed, not depleted, but spent. Her vision blurred, her limbs went heavy. She could feel herself fading. The last thing she saw was Gran charging forward, screaming her name, his body moving with the last of his strength toward the Thornvale lines. And then darkness. Rowan and Wyatt did not understand what had happened. One moment their mother was standing, fighting, blazing with power. The next, she was on the ground, pinned by Thornvale spells, her eyes closing as her consciousness slipped away. Gran was on his knees beside her, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, his body shaking with effort as he tried to push against the Thornvale lines that had closed around them. Korst raised his hand for the killing blow. "Finish them," he ordered. Burn the ruins. Leave nothing. Thornvale mages on the perimeter loosed a volley of fire spells, a wall of flame racing toward the cottage where Gran and Zen lay broken. The Thornvale knights stepped back, giving the inferno room to spread. But Venice moved first. She had been watching from the edge of the formation, her archmage perception extended outward, reading the mana signatures, tracking the battle's progress. She had refused to fight Zen. She could not. And now, as Korst ordered the killing blow, she made her choice. While the Thornvale mages focused on launching their fire volley, while the knights stepped back, while Korst turned to survey the battlefield, Venice slipped through the chaos. Her armor bore the Thornvale crest. Her mana signature was archmage level, unmistakable to any mage who could perceive it. But no one stopped her, no one questioned her. She moved with the calm certainty of someone who had every right to be there, and no one thought to look too closely. Venice did not need to be near them. Her archmage perception extended outward, reading the mana signatures of Gran and Zen from across the battlefield. She found them, broken, bleeding, hidden beneath a concealment barrier she had cast moments earlier, when Korst ordered the killing blow. While the Thornvale mages focused on launching their fire volley, while the knights stepped back, while Korst turned to survey the battlefield, Venice raised her hands and wove her spell from a distance. No one saw her, no one questioned her. Her archmage power, sharp and precise, reached across the burning yard and wrapped around Gran and Zen's bodies. The barrier pulsed with a faint shimmer, bending light and mana perception, making them invisible to anyone who did not know to look for it. Then, she cast the illusion. She reached into the ruins of the cottage, into the smouldering debris, and pulled forth two small shapes, pieces of clothing, fragments of wood, anything that could pass for remains. She placed them in the center of the destruction, directly in the path of the fire. Then she wove her spell over them, projecting an image of two bodies caught in the flames, their forms indistinguishable, their presence confirmed by the heat signatures and mana residue she carefully replicated. The fire hit. The flames roared over the ruins, consuming the debris, the illusion, everything in their path. Any Thornvale mage who scanned the area would see what she wanted them to see. Two bodies, burned beyond recognition, the remains of a man and a woman who had died together in the destruction of their home. Venus did not need to be near them. From across the battlefield, she reached out with her archmage perception, finding Gran and Zen's mana signatures through the concealment barrier. She wove a restorative charm into Gran's wounds, the magic traveling across the distance to knit flesh and ease pain. She layered a mana-stabilizing ward over Zen's core, anchoring it through the barrier to keep her power from collapsing entirely. They would survive, barely, but they would need care. They would need time. They would need to be moved before the Thornvale forces returned to check. She would do that after they left. For now, she stood, adjusted her helm, and walked away, slipping back into the formation as the Thornvale forces moved to burn the ruins and clear the battlefield. Rowan and Wyatt were still crouched behind the collapsed wall, their wards flickering weakly around them, when a hand clamped onto Rowan's arm. He turned, and before he could react, before he could move his body or call, cold chains of mana erupted from the woman's fingertips, wrapping around his wrists, his arms, his torso, pinning him in place. He struggled, but the bindings held fast, unyielding, his mana unable to break through. Wyatt screamed, or tried to, and before he could throw up a ward, mana chains lashed out from her fingers, binding Wyatt just as they had bound Rowan. Both boys struggled, thrashing against the bindings, but the woman's grip was iron-tight, her magic precise and unbreakable. "Quiet," she said, her voice low and urgent. "You will not break free. Do not try. And do not make a sound. Rowan glared at her, his chest heaving, his vision blurred with rage and fear. Who are you? What do you want? She did not answer. She pulled them backward, dragging them away from the cottage, past the smouldering ruins, past the bodies of Thornvale knights who had fallen in the battle, toward the road that led to the village. The boys struggled, but the bindings held. Her pace was relentless. She did not stop. She did not slow. She did not look back. Only when they reached the blacksmith's shop did she release them. The mana chains dissolved. Rowan and Wyatt stumbled forward, falling to their knees on the shop floor, their arms and legs numb from the bindings. They looked up at her, their eyes wide with terror and confusion. I am Venice, she said, her voice quieter now, less urgent. Zen's colleague, from Thornvale. I took you because if I had not, you would be dead. Your parents. Where are they? Wyatt demanded, his voice cracking. What happened to them? Venus's expression hardened. I do not have time to explain. The Thornvale forces are still active. They will return. You need to hide. Forge Master Shannon will help you. Trust him. Shannon was inside, hammering a piece of steel on the anvil, when they burst through the door. He looked up, his dark eyes taking in the boys' faces, the blood on their clothes, the terror in their eyes, the woman standing behind them. He set down his hammer. In, he said simply, now. He led them to the back of the shop, to a section of the floor that looked solid, but was not. He knelt, pried up a loose plank, and revealed a narrow passage leading downward, a staircase, a cellar, a hiding place. Down, he said. Both of you, stay quiet, stay still. Do not come out until I tell you. What about our parents? Wyatt asked, his voice cracking. Shannon's expression softened, just for a moment. Then it hardened again. I do not know, but you will not help them by dying here. Go, now. Rowan looked at Wyatt. Wyatt looked at Rowan. Then they climbed down the stairs, into the darkness, and Shannon pulled the plank shut above them. Down in the cellar, Rowan and Wyatt huddled in the darkness, their ears pressed against the floorboards above, listening to the muffled sounds of the battle's to end. They heard the Thornvale knights moving. They heard the order to burn the ruins. They heard the crackle of fire spreading, the groan of timber collapsing, the distant shouts of men clearing a battlefield. Then, silence. The Thornvale forces were leaving, the village was burning, and their parents were... Rowan did not finish the thought. He could not. His chest was tight, his throat closed, his vision blurred. He pressed his forehead against his knees and tried to breathe. Wyatt sat beside him, his eyes wide, his perception extended outward even now, scanning the earth above them, the mana signatures lingering in the air, the heat of the fire spreading through the village. He was cataloguing everything, analyzing everything, trying to find a pattern, a solution, a way to make sense of the senseless. But there was no pattern, there was no solution, there was only the fire above them and the darkness around them, and the knowledge that everything they had known was gone. Hours passed, the fire burned down, the village went quiet, and then, finally, the plank above them creaked open, and light spilled down into the cellar. Shannon stood in the doorway, his face grim, his arms crossed. He looked at the boys, his expression unreadable. They are gone, he said simply. The Thornvale forces have left. The cottage is destroyed. I do not know if your parents... Don't, Rowan whispered. Don't say it. I am not saying it, Shannon replied. I am saying that I do not know, but you are alive, and as long as you are alive, there is a chance. Not for them, for you. Wyatt looked up at him. What do you mean? Shannon gestured for them to follow. They climbed the stairs, emerging into the blacksmith's shop, which was dim and quiet, the forge cold, the tools hanging silent on the walls. Shannon led them to a small room off the main floor, a living quarter, sparsely furnished with a cot, a table, a chair. "You will stay here. For now. You will eat. You will rest. You will do as I tell you, and you will not ask questions you are not ready to hear the answers to." Rowan's voice cracked. "Where are they?" Shannon's jaw tightened. He looked at the boys, really looked at them, taking in their faces, their clothes, the terror and grief and confusion written across them. He sighed, a long, slow breath that seemed to carry the weight of years. "Sit," he said, "both of you." They sat. Shannon paced once, twice, then stopped and faced them. "I do not know where your parents are," he said quietly. "I hope they are alive. I hope they are safe. But I cannot promise you anything. What I can tell you is this. The people who did this to your village, to your family, are powerful. They are organized. They are ruthless. And they will not stop until they have achieved their purpose." Wyatt's hands curled into fists at his sides. "What purpose?" "That," Shannon said, "is for you to discover. But it will not be discovered from this cellar. It will be discovered by getting stronger, by learning, by becoming someone who can stand against what is coming next." Rowan stared at him. "And how do we do that?" Shannon's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "First, you learn to sweep the floor. Then you learn to stoke the forge. Then you learn to swing a hammer. And then, if you still want to talk about standing against empires, we will talk about what comes next." He turned and walked away, leaving the boys in the dim light of the blacksmith shop, the smell of cold ash and old iron filling the air around them. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of grief and routine. Shannon kept his word. He fed them, housed them, and refused to let them dwell in the cellar. He made them sweep the shop. He made them stoke the forge. He made them carry water from the well, chop wood, mend fences, and clean the tools that hung on the walls like silent judges. "You think your parents would want you hiding in the dark?" Shannon asked on the third day, watching Rowan sweep the same floor for the 10th time. "No, they would want you moving, working, living, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts." Rowan did not answer. He swept. The broom moved in steady arcs, gathering dust and ash into a pile, then sweeping the pile into another. His arms ached. His back ached. His chest ached in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. Wyatt sat in the corner, watching the forge, his eyes tracking the way the embers cooled, the way the metal changed color as it heated, the way Shannon's hands moved with a precision that was almost artistic. He said nothing. He did not need to. His mind was already working through the patterns, the physics, the mana flow that governed the forge. Weeks passed. The village of Willow's Hollow was a ruin. The Thornvale forces had not returned. The villagers who had survived had scattered, fleeing to neighboring towns and farms, leaving the hollow to burn and rot in silence. Rowan and Wyatt did not cry anymore. They did not speak of their parents. They swept, they worked, they learned. Shannon taught them blacksmithing in small doses, patient and methodical. He showed them how to read the color of heated metal, cherry red for forging, orange for shaping, yellow for welding. He showed them how to hold the hammer, how to strike with the body's weight rather than arm strength, how to listen to the ring of steel to judge its temper. "Your father was a warrior," Shannon said one evening, as Rowan struggled to shape a piece of iron that refused to bend. "A knight of Ironhold, one of the strongest men I have ever met. He chose to lay down his sword and live quietly. That was not weakness. That was his strength. He loved your mother. He loved you both. He fought to protect what he loved, and he would have done it again. That is who you come from. Remember that. Rowan's hands trembled. The hammer slipped, striking the anvil with a harsh clang. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to remember him, Shannon said quietly. Not as he was in his last moments, not as a broken body in the ruins, but as he was. A man who chose love over war, a man who fought to protect what he loved. That is who you come from. Remember that. Wyatt, who had been listening from the corner, spoke up. What about you, Forge Master? Why are you here, in Willow's Hollow? Shannon's expression hardened. He set down his hammer and turned to face Wyatt, his dark eyes sharp. I was once the royal blacksmith for the king of another land, he said, his voice flat. I forged weapons for his knights, armor for his guards, tools for his people. I was respected, I was wealthy, I was happy. He paused, his jaw tightening. Then the politics came. The courtiers whispered. The king's advisers grew suspicious of a commoner who held the king's trust. They planted lies. They forged letters. They accused me of treason. I did not fight them. I did not try to clear my name. I left, in the night, with nothing but the clothes on my back and the tools in my hands. He picked up his hammer again, returning to the anvil. I have never told that story to anyone in Willow's Hollow. Gran knew. He knew before he arrived. He did not ask. He did not judge. He simply asked for a great sword for his son, and a short sword and twin daggers for the other. And he paid, and he left, and he never spoke of it again. Wyatt nodded slowly. He understood patterns. He understood what Shannon was doing, teaching them not just to swing a hammer, but to listen, to observe, to read the world around them. The blacksmithing was not the lesson. The lesson was beneath the lesson. What happens now? Wyatt asked quietly. Shannon did not answer right away. He struck the iron 3 times, then set the hammer down. Now, he said, we wait, and we prepare, because I have a feeling this is not over. 3 weeks after the Thornvale forces left, a rider arrived at the blacksmith's shop. He rode hard, his horse sweating, his cloak dust-choked, his face grim. He carried no crest, no banner, no visible affiliation, but Shannon recognized him immediately, or rather, recognized the way he rode, the way he scanned the horizon, the way his hand rested casually but constantly on his sword hilt. Stealth specialization, knight, mercenary. Shannon opened the door before the rider could knock. Will, he said quietly. Will dismounted, his boots striking the packed earth with practiced silence. He looked at Shannon, then past him, through the doorway, into the shop where Rowan and Wyatt stood frozen, their faces lighting with a mixture of hope and fear. Forge Master, Will said, his voice low. I have news, and I have a proposition. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, the boys, the cold forge, the tools hanging silent on the walls. He nodded once, as though cataloguing everything, then turned to face them. The Thornvale forces are still active, he said. They have not returned to Willow's Hollow, but they have not stopped. They are moving north, consolidating power, hunting down remaining deserters. If you have anyone you are worried about, they are not safe, not yet, and they will not be safe, until someone can stand against what is coming. Rowan's hands curled into fists. What are you saying? Will looked at him directly, his dark eyes sharp, his expression unreadable. I am saying that the Toad mercenaries are looking for fighters, skilled ones, trained ones, boys like you. You have potential. I saw it in your training. I heard it in the way you held yourselves when Thornvale came. You did not break, not completely. He turned to Shannon. I know you have been teaching them. I can see it in their posture, in the way they carry themselves. They have a foundation, But foundations are not enough. They need training. They need specialization. They need paths that Willow's Hollow cannot provide. Wyatt's mind raced. He was already calculating, already weighing options, already seeing the patterns. The Toad mercenaries were well known in the region. They were professional. They were connected. They had resources, formation magic, stealth training, mana geysers, ancient tomes, rare alloys. Resources that Willow's Hollow could never offer. "What do you want from us?" Wyatt asked quietly. Will's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "I want you to come with me. Train with us. Learn what we can teach. Grow stronger. Become someone who can face what is coming." Rowan's voice cracked. "And our parents." Will's expression softened, just for a moment. "I do not know where they are. I do not know if they are alive, but I know this. If they are alive, they would want you to live, to fight, to survive, not to hide in a blacksmith shop, sweeping floors and grieving." He stepped back, giving them space. "You have 3 days to decide. I will be in the village of Oak Haven, 2 miles east. Send word if you choose to come. Do not come if you choose to stay. I will not force you." He turned and walked to the door, then paused, looking back at Shannon. "He will understand," Will said quietly, nodding toward the boys. "You have done well by them." Shannon did not answer. He simply nodded, his expression unreadable. Will mounted his horse and rode away, disappearing into the dust and the distance, leaving the boys standing in the blacksmith shop, the weight of his words pressing down on them, like a physical force. Rowan and Wyatt did not sleep that night. They sat in the small room off the main floor, the darkness closing around them, the silence pressing in from all sides. Neither of them spoke for a long time. There was too much to process, too much to feel, too much to decide. Finally, Wyatt spoke. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. Rowan stared at the wall, his eyes unfocused, his mind racing. "I think about our parents. I think about them lying in the ruins. I think about them bleeding and broken and—" He stopped. His throat tightened, his vision blurred. Wyatt reached out, placing a hand on his brother's arm. "I know." Rowan closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were red, but steady. "If they are alive, they would want us to live." Will said that, and I think he is right. Wyatt nodded slowly. "But if we go, we are leaving them. We are leaving everything." "We are not leaving them," Rowan said, his voice firm. "We are leaving Willow's Hollow. Our parents are not Willow's Hollow. Our parents are—" He stopped again. The words caught in his throat. He could not say them. Not yet. Wyatt understood. He had felt the same weight, the same grief, the same terror, but he also understood something Rowan was still struggling to accept. Grief was not a destination. It was a companion, and you did not carry it by sitting still. You carried it by moving forward, even when every step felt like walking through fire. "We should tell Shannon," Wyatt said quietly. Rowan nodded. They stood, walked to the main floor, and found Shannon stoking the forge, the embers glowing faintly in the pre-dawn dark. "We are going," Rowan said. His voice was steady. His hands were not. Shannon did not look up. He continued stoking the forge, the bellows hissing, the embers flaring. When he spoke, his voice was flat, controlled, the voice of a man who had spent years learning to hide what he felt behind what he did. "Good," he said. "You will need to learn to pack light. You will be living out of a pack for a while." Rowan opened his mouth to say something, "Thank you," or "Goodbye," or "I am sorry," or "I am afraid," but no words came. He simply nodded. Shannon set down the bellows and turned to face them. His dark eyes were sharp, assessing, but not unkind. He reached into his apron and pulled out a small pouch, handing it to Rowan. "For supplies," he said. "Do not spend it all on weapons. You will need food. You will need medicine. You will need coin for things you cannot imagine yet." Rowan took the pouch, his fingers closing around it tightly. "Thank you, Forge Master." Shannon's jaw tightened. He looked at them both, his expression unreadable, his hands clenched at his sides. Then he turned back to the forge, his shoulders stiff, his voice flat. "Get some rest. You ride at dawn." They left before sunrise. The village of Oak Haven was small, quiet, unremarkable, the kind of place that existed only to serve as a way station between larger towns. The Toad mercenaries had made camp on the outskirts, their flags furled, their pipes unlit, their warriors moving, with the quiet efficiency of professionals, preparing for departure. Will was waiting for them at the edge of the camp, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He looked at the boys, taking in their faces, their posture, the way they carried themselves, not as children, but as people who had seen too much and were choosing to keep moving anyway. "Good," he said quietly. "Then we are ready to go." He turned and walked toward the wagons, gesturing for them to follow. Rowan and Wyatt fell into step behind him, their packs heavy on their shoulders, their eyes fixed on the road ahead. They did not look back at Willow's Hollow. They did not look back at the ruins of their home. They did not look back at the blacksmith shop, or the forge, or the cellar where they had hidden while the world burned. They walked forward, toward the unknown, toward the training, toward the strength they would need to face what was coming. Toward revenge, toward survival, toward the path that would take them from who they were to who they needed to become. The road stretched ahead of them, long and uncertain, but they walked it together.